Hi, who's starting?
Oh, I guess we should have discussed that before we actually hit the go live button. Well, you go for it. Go for it. You.
Okay. Well, is this our third week?
But yeah, we're doing good so far. It's
Yeah,
three
we
weeks.
are. Okay. So it's the LaRouche slate in the state of New York. Diane running for U.S. Senate against Gillibrand. Jose Vega running against the Crown Prince of APAC, Richie Torres in the Bronx.
Prince of APAC.
Yeah. And boy, oh boy, has it ever been a week when we reviewed what we wanted to discuss. We had the New York primary with the 16th congressional district, which we discussed last time with APAC, plowing 14 million or 18 million dollars in plus other money, making it the most expensive primary ever. Assange is out of Belmarsh and home. That's obviously big. We had the Biden debate, and can you imagine people are saying that he's senile?
Oh wow, yeah, he was perfectly fine up until a week ago.
Right, exactly.
I don't
This
know
is
what happened.
a sudden onset of dementia. I don't know. And the hoopla around that. And then clearly, we are on the cusp of thermonuclear war. The people in the US are absolutely tone deaf. They don't hear what Putin is saying. He made an offer June 14th of a peace proposal embedded in a new European security architecture, and that really deserves to be discussed. And then, of course, not to get short shrift, but a Norwegian relief agency, not UNRWA or something else, which people have tried to discredit. I don't agree with that, but let me just say this is from a Norwegian agency, has reported that 82% of the people in Gaza, in the Rafah area, have no idea where they will get food. They have no access to food. So the starvation is really escalating, and apparently we've now moved that idiotic pier that Biden built because they're expecting another storm, which will sweep it away. And you know, Biden could order any of the entrances open in an instant and
Hmm.
get food and medical supplies into these people. The point is, he doesn't want to do it. So, those are our topics. I'll let you start with whatever you
Oh
wish.
man, I don't know, Diane. It's hard to pick which one. It definitely was kind of an explosive week, and it seemed natural that it was going to be explosive. I think we can start with the fact that we're sellouts, I guess, for supporting Jamal Bowman and going out and getting out the vote for Jamal Bowman because that's what we were doing. Clearly.
No, we were doing battle with APAC. Just like Lyndon LaRouche in 2016 said the election was about him versus Hillary Clinton and did not endorse Trump. This election was about the LaRouche slate versus APAC. And it was a good, I think it was very important for people who are not accustomed to fighting, who don't know how to fight. And clearly, we ruffled some feathers. And after our campaigns got involved, this started getting picked up in the Israeli press. And even some Democrats had to try and cover their rear end and say, do you think it was a little excessive to spend so much money getting Jamal Bowman replaced, or, at least George Latimer beat him in the primary? And that also was interesting because I believe the vote for Bowman in the little section of the Bronx was about 84%. And
Yep.
in the area, including Westchester, he was down to around 37%. But since that's contiguous to your district, although it's, of course, the whole state is in my district, any particular insights you want to share, and also how Bowman undercut his
Well,
chances?
I I have to say I think I agree with Jerry Nadler where he said that APAC didn't need to spend as much money as they did to get Jamal Bowman out. In a sense, he's right because Jamal. I mean, being on the ground at Mount Vernon, this is where we were, and we were thrown out of Mount Vernon two times. Okay, each time told to go back to the Bronx. Um, you get the sense of talking to people where people just say, well, Jamal Bowman doesn't do anything for me, and I know who George Latimer is. APAC picked a very good candidate to run against Jamal Bowman because George Latimer was known to everyone. He turned around, he was at every wedding, every graduation. He was
Sort of
truly.
like Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, if that's enough to win people over and win voters over, I mean, and I don't have a lot of faith in the electorate, but that's why we're doing what we're doing. We have to go and educate the electorate. But no, Jamal Bowman was always incompetent and a moron. I mean, we weren't out getting the vote for Bowman. We were clearly trying to educate people by making sure their districts would not be sold into political slavery. And we did get a lot of people who signed up for our campaigns. We got good contacts, and there was that abhorrent rally. That rally that AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Jamal Bowman had, where only like two people showed up. Well, excuse me. I think they had at best 1,000 people show up,
Right.
which compared to 2020 or even 2016 when Bernie Sanders was running, I mean, he had like thousands of people show up, if not tens of thousands of people who could show up. It shows that they've lost, and this whole thing about the two-party system, it's dead. It's dead,
I think
and
people really felt sold out. I know Jimmy Dore spoke about it a lot, and a lot of New York activists, because AOC, for example, had promised to champion Medicare for all. She promised that the squad was going to fight for this, and then they got there and they said, "Oh, we can't do anything," right? Which really isn't true. We run into this all the time. People say, "What can I do? I'm only one person." Jamal Bowman, AOC, and company saying, "What can we do? We're only congressmen." So
yeah,
they,
right.
I think their base felt betrayed. So I was happy to see Bowman sticking to his position against genocide in Gaza, and clearly he feels very personally connected to that. Perhaps because he was a school principal, he cares a lot about children. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know when I've seen him be such a sellout on other matters, but for some reason he has a modicum of conscience on that. And that's, I think, what people wanted to fight for. But you can't salvage everything when people know that you haven't fought in these other areas where they felt like it mattered.
Yeah, I made the point that it would have required Bowman to come out and say, I don't know why I'm funding these wars and I need to stop. It would have required Bernie Sanders to say, I didn't lose in 2016 because of Vladimir Putin. I lost because of Hillary Clinton. And it would have required AOC to come out and say, I've been a sellout my entire career and I need to fix that. Not to, maybe I'm a little upset that we were barred from the rally, but.
Well, a big problem in the nation today is that there is no trust between the population and the people that they elect to represent them, or the
Yes.
people they don't elect, because we know there are a lot of questions about that as well.
I think that's what's great about our campaigns, Diane, is that we assume that people are capable of being active in their electeds' lives and in their government. They only want, they being the oligarchy would like it if people only cared about the stuff that, well, what is gas? What is groceries? Which, of course, those things affect people, but there's a whole lot of things going on that are happening without them knowing. So.
Right. One of which is nuclear war. And I want to go to that because I think you have to look at what happened in the debate in that context. And just to underscore, I mentioned already that Putin had made this speech June 14th to the foreign ministry. And this is really important. I don't know that people realize Putin had not met with that group since November of 2021. So this is not an annual meeting, a monthly meeting. He had not pulled these people together since right before his, I would almost say desperate, but he is not a desperate person, but his last ditch effort to get the West to respond to his legitimate security concerns. And he tried to get treaty agreements, you remember, in writing. Ukraine will not join NATO. Ukraine will not have nuclear weapons in it right against Russia's border. And we are going to not tolerate ethnic cleansing of the Russian speaking people in the Donbass region.
Yeah.
And that was all ignored, but it meant they had a profile that Putin considered killing a bunch of Russians in Donbass to be a red line. So, sure enough, the Nazi infested Ukrainian armed forces lined up against the border between the autonomous, Donetsk and Lugansk regions, ready to invade. We were never told that. We were only told Putin was going to invade Russia. But it vindicates my position on a radio show with Joe Pinion from 2022, where the host totally freaked out because he said, "You posted on Facebook that Putin was not going to invade Ukraine, and then you deleted the post." And I said, well, I guess I underestimated how badly the West wanted this war.
Yep.
At the point, they all started shrieking. And and that's what you saw. Why was Biden able to say so precisely that Putin will invade Ukraine on this day? Because that was the day they were planning. And I believe the day before the special military operation, the Ukrainians dropped something like 1,600 shells on the capital city of Donetsk. So they very deliberately provoked it. So I'm just saying there has not been such a meeting in 2.5 years. So Putin having such a meeting and giving a speech, which is available in English everywhere, about his proposed peace plan and framework is really important. And it is rather outrageous that it was dismissed out of hand, probably without even reading it, by Lloyd Austin and other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that I was listening to Alexander Mercouris talk about this. He said, the West should have immediately, or America should have immediately just countered with something, anything. They don't reject it outright, but just, say, actually, okay, well, let's talk about the terms here and there. But they just rejected it outright almost immediately. They probably didn't even read it. So it goes to show you, well, then wait, what is our position exactly? What are we doing here in Ukraine? Why aren't we trying to stop the bloodshed? And then you look, then we go to this debate, right? Are people genuinely supposed to believe that Joe Biden is the one reading these proposals and saying and conferring with his people and saying, well, what do we think? No, of course not. I think this just proved that we don't know who's running our country. And I think that should be of something of concern of every American, that they have a right to know who's running their country, don't they? So we supposedly elected this guy Joe Biden to run our country, and yet we saw last night that he's dementia ridden. So you think about it, who has the nuclear codes? Who has the nuclear strike capability? Because and you would hope actually that they knew this guy was dementia ridden, because if they didn't know he was dementia ridden, or at least were pretending that he was completely competent and capable of it, I think that's worse. Actually, I think I would be a lot more afraid if that were true, that our government is run by such idiots.
Because a lot of people are saying that this was actually a sort of a coup, or that some people have had their doubts about, within the Democratic Party. So they wanted the debate to see him fail, because it is odd to have a debate well before the convention.
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah. And also, the fact that the Time magazine put out this magazine, did you see it, the cover? It just says, oh, you didn't see this? Okay, actually, I think I'm going to pull this up, actually, because I did not believe they would actually publish something like this. Let me see if I can. Okay, share screen, Time ban. Okay, so here we go. Right here. This was the cover that Time put out. Maybe if I can do open image, a new tab, share this tab instead. There you go. This was the latest Time magazine cover. It's Joe Biden walking out, and it just says panic. You can't come back from that. How can you come back from that? How can you actually, of course, at this point, Joe Biden has to be replaced. And I think there was some MSNBC article that came out today saying that Joe Biden will be discussing with his wife today the future of his presidency and his candidacy. Somebody pointed this out, that the NATO summit is meeting on July 9th in Washington.
Yes.
Right? So Biden has no reason not to show up, but if he doesn't show up, what does that mean? And if he does show up, what does that mean too? So they're in this kind of catch-22
Right.
situation.
Well, that's what both Caitlin Johnstone and Seymour Hersh raised, which is forget the next 4 years. Can you afford to have a person who is this debilitated in the White House when we are on the cusp of a nuclear war, not because of Putin, but because of our own insanity and arrogance? And I'll just say on that note that Putin is saying that Russia is now going to begin producing their intermediate, or they're looking at beginning to produce their intermediate range nuclear missiles. Again, this is what Scott Ritter was involved in, was their getting rid of these. Whoops, sorry about that noise.
Is
Maybe
that
you should.
Rusty?
Baxter, yeah, he's choking,
No,
having an allergy attack.
this is why I prefer cats. But yeah, um, yeah, no, and Caitlin Johnstone is right. I mean, what about now? Right. Forget the next 4 years. What about now? Uh, Kim Iverson tweeted something out, and so did Caitlin Johnstone. I mean, it makes sense why you would come to this conclusion. Why should I even vote? Think about all the people who feel cheated. They went to the polls to vote for Joe Biden. I mean, if you are actually a Joe Biden voter when he's the only choice on the ballot, and you went out and you said, well, I'm going to go vote for him anyway, and now they're just going to sweep him from under your rug. We were out in the Bronx yesterday, Diane, and I was talking to somebody, and I asked him straightforwardly, do you think after that debate Joe Biden is running the country? And he said to me, well, Obama had a bad debate before. I mean, and bad debates happen.
That's what Obama said about it.
Yeah, and right, and people are living in a fantasy right now where it's like we have this crack into world fascism right now, and people want to live in this la la land that they live in some kind of semblance of a democracy.
Right. Well, also remember, because thanks to Robert Kennedy's campaign, we know that he left the Democratic Party because he was told, we don't care how many votes you get in the Democratic primary, we're going to give your delegates to Biden. So we know that the Democratic National Committee has no intention whatsoever of counting people's vote. So now what they're doing is they're saying, well, we waited until all the primaries were over because we don't want your input. We don't want you to have a choice of who we're going to nominate, and we're going to select somebody who will continue to carry out our war and Wall Street and intelligence agency colonial policy, and we're going to choose them.
Yeah,
and you have a choice.
Yeah, yeah. It we this is why we're starting what we're doing, which is we're trying to educate the population. We're trying to break people out of their mental slavery and say you don't have to be beholden to these two choices. Elections begin the day you elect to free yourself, make yourself independent. And so, yeah.
Exactly. Now, one other thing I think we do need to touch on is Assange.
Yes.
Tremendous.
Yeah. A success for humanity. I mean, I don't know if anybody really knows where this actually came from. Was this a Biden play? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, Diane. I'm happy that he's out, and I know some people have been upset that he, took a plea deal and he pleaded guilty to one count as opposed to the 19 counts that they were charging him, and I don't know. I don't know what it means. Maybe it does set a precedent, but the important thing is the guy's home now, and he's with his family, and he did not deserve to be tortured the way he was.
Yeah, and that's why I think people really cannot judge, say, oh, well, I would never. Well, you don't know what it was like for him. I mean, not only was he in Belmarsh for over 5 years, which is a very brutal place, much of which time he was in solitary confinement, which is horrible. That really is torture. But then he was, in effect, a captive in the Ecuadorian embassy.
Yeah.
For years before that. He hasn't had a normal life. He has a wife and 2 children that he wants to see. So I don't begrudge him that. I do think that Biden was doing it as a ploy, but I think it also, everyone should take hope and escalate our efforts to change all these policies, because I think that this would not have happened if it didn't have to happen. And I
Yeah.
listened to part of the 4-hour live stream from leading into the hearing in the Mariana Islands and after. And there was a commentator from Australia, from some kind of a think tank. She said that the Assange case was creating some friction between the US and Australia, because, of course, the line from the US is the reason why we're launching all of these wars against every small country under the sun and against Russia and China, which are larger countries, is because we have the gold standard of human rights and democracy. I was literally at a meeting at the Asia Society where the idiots, Nick Burns, speaker, said, well, the Chinese, it was like Vietnam, they told people, well, the Vietnamese don't really care about human life the way we do. That's why we're killing 3 million of them. So the people around, the Chinese really don't care about human rights. They have no standard, unlike the United States, which has such a magnificent standard of human rights that we have. New York City, by the way, has 350,000 homeless people now, thanks to the migrants and everything. That's great, right? They're doing really well. We're really concerned about their well-being and the well-being of the people they're displacing. So Julian Assange, facing 175 years in prison, and the case being very well known, was a sticking point. And also, he is Australian, which is why I keep wondering how the Espionage Act can apply to someone who's not a US citizen. How can you control whether someone who is not an American, what is it of our business if someone who is not American does something that might be detrimental to our security? You know what I'm saying? It's just, the whole thing is outrageous, and being a journalist is not being a spy. So there was pressure felt. They wanted him to die. Remember, Pompeo was talking about how to assassinate him.
Yeah.
And that means we don't know what else is under the surface, what might be potentially rupturing, what things are about to get out of control of this evil cabal. And of course, what we're intent upon doing is making things get very out of their control. We want to take back power in this country. We don't want a bunch of billionaire genocidalists to be dictating the policy of the United States government.
And it's within our grasp, honestly, Diane. People have been saying that the biggest winners of that debate was us, because we're, actually independent candidates who are not bought by any lobby or any specific corporation. And I think, what I've been telling people in the Bronx when I was out there yesterday was, well, hey, if you elect me, who's running the seat. With Richie Torres, there's so many lobbyists in his pocket, you actually don't know who's running the Congress when he's in charge. So, yeah.
Right. Or he's in so many lobbyists' pockets that you don't know where he is. Yeah. He has multiple personalities.
Exactly. But hey, here's to Julian Assange. Hopefully he keeps speaking more truth, and maybe he pulls out some more files like what he uncovered with the DNC emails. Because, I wonder what kind of emails are being sent back and forth this year. So
who knows?
Yeah.
Now, what do you have planned? Do you want to say anything about this week for the July 4th? Because that's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is not open to the public, but we will be inaugurating our office. As people can see, I have a different background. So hopefully this is the last interview. I'm supposed to be getting like a webcam and a microphone and some better clothes too. That was not paid for by campaign money because it's illegal to buy clothes with the FEC makes it.
That disclaimer. Thank you for that disclaimer.
Yeah, right. Just had to make a disclaimer. The clothes were not bought with campaign donations because it's illegal, which I understand why too. People were buying Louis Vuitton bags and all kinds of stupid things, but they don't think about people who have no money.
People who get dark money, right, or invisible money, because I would never want to waste someone's $3,300 FEC limit on
a Gucci bag. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. So, but no, we're going to be inaugurating the office. I'll be giving a presentation on Gouverneur Morris. I'll be inviting some of our close volunteers and friends, and of course your campaign to come over. We'll be holding, it's July 4th weekend. So We'll be holding a series of rallies in the Bronx and for you around the state as well. And we'll be holding some classes and lectures on the American Revolution and why it's important.
Great. I'll just say that I've just written a statement that I'm really happy about for the 4th of July, and I want to get out thousands of copies of it all over the state. And it references the July 4th, 1821 address of John Quincy Adams, which is where this thing that everyone quotes, search not abroad, or however it goes, about monsters, not searching abroad for monsters to destroy. But there's much more in that address. So people can go to my website to get that. And also, if you want to help, if you want to come out and campaign over July 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th, get in touch with our campaigns, because we're going to be everywhere. I want to have banners over highways and leaflets and leafleting and parades and car shows and everything else we can get to.
Absolutely. Okay, all right. I guess that concludes our weekly update then.
Great.
All right, we don't have an end card, so I'm just going to say goodbye everyone while I